Hey guys, welcome back to Comic Quirks with Jimmy. As always, I'm Jimmy, so you can either call me Jimmy or Jimmy. Either three works really. So, welcome back. We're gonna have some fun with Landry Q. Walker, the guy who wrote The Last Siege, one of the best indie books of 2018. I had so much fun reading it. And we had Justin on, his artist for the book. So now we get to complete the circle. What's up, man?
How you doing?
I'm having so much fun. I'm living life, nothing too much. Hey,
I was going to say, I'm super glad you're giving me a chance here to rebuke any lies that Justin might have spewed. Because, him and I, we work together, but we're kind of enemies.
Dude, the guy's a sweetheart. He had nothing but kind words to say to you, man.
I know, I watched it. That's how you know it's lies.
Yeah. So we have Lord in the chat. Hold on. Sorry, I got a kid walking in my room. Hey, buddy, you want to go back out there? Yeah. Okay. Sorry, give me 1 second. It's one of the kids I work with. Whew, sorry about that. Oh, there it is, Last Siege.
I have a whole stack. Under my puppet version of me, I have a whole stack of books that I wrote in case we talk about any of them.
Pull them out, man. Like, what is there? Because I only have like 4 books. What other books do you have in there?
Well, let's see. I've got The Ultimate Guide to Wonder Woman, which I wrote just before the movie came out, where I condensed the entire comic book history of the character, and I read 700 issues of Wonder Woman to do it. I didn't want to pull information off the internet. Similarly, I have The Ultimate Guide to the Justice League. I did the same thing with that. It was fun to kind of dovetail into some of the historian parts of the comics industry and write kind of about these things. The movie making magic of Star Wars, it's a similar kind of thing where I wrote about the production of special effects in all the Star Wars movies leading up till Rise of Skywalker. I think we did it just before that one came out.
Because that was Industrial Light and Magic, right?
Yeah. Well, it was with Lucasfilm, and it was all the Industrial Light and Magic stuff, and talking about the transition from practical effects to digital effects, and it's really fascinating just to research. And I owe a lot to the work of Rinsler, who wrote really comprehensive books on the production of the Star Wars films. So I was lucky there was somebody who had done the hard work and all these deep cut interviews that I could pull from and learn from. So standing on the shoulders of giants with that one.
You want to know something funny is my father, his aunt, well, I guess my great aunt, she worked on the original Star Wars movies for Industrial Light and Magic and that company. And so for Christmas, he got a Darth Vader and a Stormtrooper prop helmet that he still owns today. And it's cool, man. Like, my family just is one of the coolest people in the world. And so he was like, growing up, he loved Star Wars. I got fucking Return of the Jedi right there. That's an actual original poster too.
Right. You want to see my rarest and most valuable Star Wars item? I go grab it. It's right there. It's like
I do want to see it. So while we're here, okay. Hey Lord, what's up, man? Tehillim, how you doing? Thank you for stopping by. Hold on, let me may the force be with you. Awesome. What's that?
This is a lucite star that Gary Kurtz had made, the producer of New Hope and Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, wow.
He gave them to the cast and crew at the end of the production, but they were given away at least one other time at a birthday party for his daughter, who's about my age. My dad worked in the entertainment industry for a company called Lasermation, if I recall at the time. And so we were invited to this birthday party. So I was at a birthday party. It was held at George Lucas's house when I was 7 years old. And there was one of these on each table, so we stole it.
Oh, my goodness.
So Mark Hamill was there. I got to meet Mark Hamill, and he was signing autographs for all the kids. And they had somebody dressed as Chewbacca and somebody dressed as Darth Vader. And it was an amazing experience. My father wouldn't let me have this, so I had to wait until he died. And then I found it. He packed it away in the garage, his garage, and the rats had made a nest on top of it. So that was great.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's a little bonkers. They're really hard to get, these things. So it's a neat little Star Wars connection I have. Growing up in the Bay Area had its perks in that regard,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the 70s.
So you did. What was your origin into comics, though?
Okay. Well, I mean, when I was like 4 and 5 years old, I was obsessed with Batman and Robin. The 60s show was on reruns. I was born in 71, so I wasn't around the first time, but in reruns, I watched it like crazy. And I was just into it. And that led me into the comic books. And I was just a hardcore comic book reader from the time I could read. Like, I know I was reading them by the time I was like 5 years old. I was collecting like properly by the time I was 11. I went through a long wave. It was either DC Comics or Harvey Comics, like the Hot Stuff, Casper stuff when I was.
Oh, Hot Stuff and Little Devil.
Yeah, so I had not a super great childhood. We were homeless a lot of chunks.
Oh wow.
And, the only thing I had were my comics. My comics were like, super escapism for me. And so there's a big emotional connection for me with comics, and so I became very invested in them, as you might expect. So it's the only thing I ever wanted to do, and I functionally didn't. Well, I continued through into high school, but I functionally didn't pass a grade after 6th grade because of the aforementioned homeless issue. And I pretty much quit school trying just to focus on writing, because I came to the conclusion that the formal education path wasn't going to serve me very well. It hadn't to date at that point. And I felt like all I needed to do to become a writer was learn to write, and I didn't have to go to school for that. I could do that by reading. So I became an obsessive reader. And then I met Eric Jones and several other people. Now, artist Eric Jones, for clarity here, he's like family, like brother. We've known each other since we were 16, 17 years old, although our families are somewhat connected, like deeply. I met him and his social group when I was about 16. They were all artists. They wanted to make comics. I couldn't draw, but I looked at it and said, well, none of you are drawing. How about if I write? So I started writing comics. Eric was the one who was producing most sequential art. So we started teaming up on projects. We're like 19 by this point. And
oh man, you're way ahead of the game.
Yeah, we were jumping into it. And this is like 1990. We were working at that for a couple years. I mean, it was a lot of false starts, a lot of bad stuff that we were getting out of our system. Then we met Dylan Williams. Do you know, you probably don't know who Dylan Williams was. He's passed away now, but he himself, myself, Eric, a guy named Kate Capelli, Scott Sue Storiker, Gabby Gamboa, and a few others formed a small press art collective in Berkeley called Puppy Toss in 1992.
Okay.
At this point, most of us are working at a store called Comic Relief for Rory Group. And so we started this distribution publishing company. So we were distributing Dan Clowes, Adrian Tomine. I mean, Dan Clowes was with Fantagraphics, but we were still kind of reselling stuff. But we were distributing Adrian Tomine's work, Errol Bordeaux, lots of people in that vein. And actually, I was prepared. This, if you can see it.
Yeah, let me get it real quick.
This is, Dylan Williams did this. It's a piece of art he did for a sculpture he did in San Francisco back in 1992, 93.
That is beautiful.
I think Keith Knight was there. He was part of it. Keith Knight was a part of it. If you've seen his work, The K Chronicles, he has that new show Woke on Hulu.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it was a San Francisco comic book scene. The one that he's talking about in his show, that was our scene. That was this whole comic.
Wow, that's insane.
It's oh my god, it's such a if okay for people.
You were surrounded by just some of the most creative people possible.
Very lucky. I've kind of Forrest Gumped my way through the world. Keith Knight is phenomenally talented and always been he's been laser focused the entire time I've known him on his POV, and it is consistent through and through. I think. Let me see. Wait, did I grab it? Oh yeah. Hey, here's something neat. Keith did a pinup back in 2000 for this book. This is Little Gloomy. Oh yeah, here we go. Keith Knight did a piece for Little Gloomy. Yeah, it's for mine and Eric Jones' Little Gloomy book. Keith did.
Oh, that is beautiful. It has almost oh crap, Calvin and Hobbes / Beetlejuice vibes.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I would say there's a bit of that in the Little Gloomy book. Yeah, that's about right. It was kind of my take. Actually, I mentioned the Harvey Comics. So Harvey Comics was one of the big ones for me with Hot Stuff and Casper. But I was always like, why isn't there a Frankenstein monster, a mummy, a vampire? And so Eric and I, back in 1998, put this book together. It's probably our first big seller in comics. So between 92 and 98, we did the Small Press Collective thing with Puppy Toss. We met a lot of great people, but we ultimately decided we'd rather focus on our own stuff. And so by 94, we left the group and we started working with Slave Labor Graphics. We worked with a company called Aeon, and we put out a couple books that weren't very great. We started working for BAM Magazine, which was a music magazine distributed across the coast here. And we did a strip in that. And at that same time that Keith was doing a strip, a guy named Jesse Recklaw was doing his strip Slow Wave. So there's kind of a little strip culture that was growing up there too. And we decided then that's when we switched to all ages. It was 1998. That's the key thing there, because both Eric and I were getting tired of being able to snatch our comics back out of the hands of kids in these signings and events we do. It's like, that's half our audience, and if kids don't get into comics, who's going to read comics in the future?
Exactly.
So we shifted gears and started doing a bunch of all ages stuff in 98. And then in 99, we met Steve Bailing, whose name most people don't know, but he's an incredibly important person in the history of comics. Steve Bailing at that time, had just become the editor for Disney Adventures magazine. And we hand him a copy of our book at San Diego Comic-Con, said, hey, we're doing these all ages comics. We didn't know who he was. He was just walking by. And he's like, if you're doing all ages comics, well, I'm doing those too. Let's talk. So we ended up doing Little Gloomy, the comic I just showed, and a book called Kid Gravity for Disney Adventures for 7 years. And it was all creator-owned comics being published by Disney in every grocery store in the freaking world. So we had a distribution of 2 million, an estimated readership of 5 million.
Jeez.
And we were doing this from 2000 to 2007. At the same time, we'd go to like San Diego Comic-Con and WonderCon. People would be like, hey man, what happened to you guys? You really dropped off the map. I'm like, yeah, we're just in every grocery store in the country, being read by like every child in America. I mean, what map are you on?
Unless they see you at the big 2 or Image, you're not there.
Exactly. And that's the thing. So we did that for 7 years, and Disney, we were just launching a TV show or getting a TV show off the ground with 1492, with the Little Gloomy stuff. Mm-hmm. We worked with Henry Selick for a little while. He was the director and main visionary, frankly, behind Nightmare.
No relation to Tom Selleck?
No, different spelling.
Oh, okay.
He did Nightmare Before Christmas. He did James and the Giant Peach. He did.
Oh wow.
Recent Neil Gaiman one, Coraline. He was actually
Coraline.
Originally started working on Coraline, same time we were working with him. So that was back in 2000, 2001. He'd done Monkey Bone.
With Brendan Fraser.
He wasn't happy with that one.
I don't think many people were.
So, although I don't think it's a secret. So, we did that for 7 years, and then Disney Adventures Disney got became under new management, and they decided to fold the magazine, which was insane because it was a huge seller. So we shifted gears. We talked to Bob Schreck at DC Comics, who we'd known for years and years, but we'd never worked with him. He'd been at Dark Horse before that and Comico before that. And so we asked him, said, hey man, we're kind of out of work. Got any ideas? And he said, you know what? You need to talk to Jan Jones. She's launching a new all ages line for the Johnny DC line. The same one that Art Baltzar and Franco were doing Tiny Titans for.
Oh, wow.
And we knew them because they were part of the Disney Adventures thing too. They were doing their Gorilla stuff for Disney Adventures at the same time we were doing Kid Gravity and Little Bloomy. We're all part of this Disney Adventures comics scene. So we then jumped to doing Supergirl Cosmic Adventures, which I have here.
This is great, dude.
See, I was ready. I was prepared.
You know, cool thing about that though is, so I was telling you off air that I think DC has DC's a little better than Marvel, but the big two have a hard time marketing and selling to. That's a good picture. Yeah, it's beautiful. They have a hard time marketing and selling to a YA audience. And for you, you sold roughly from Comic-Con, so we don't really know how accurate that is, to a YA audience. Ooh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, Eric, this was a great page to work with Eric on. Eric is one of the most underrated artists in the industry as far as I'm concerned, because it's the same guy who drew Danger Club, if you've looked at that. He reinvents himself, and he colored Last Siege, the first 4 issues, and Brad.
Okay.
He reinvents himself for every project. But okay, sorry, you were saying.
And you should take pride in that for a YA single issue floppy month-to-month book. You sold roughly around. It went from the first one was around 10,000 copies sold. Really great for a YA book. And then it dropped down to around 8, which is still really good. Why do you think they have a hard time selling to YA audiences and marketing and branching out and stuff like that?
Well, we were a little early with some of this stuff. Supergirl, if I recall the timeline correctly, launched the end of 2008. We were in a weird place because on one hand, you had executives at DC who looked at it and literally said, yeah, it can be about pillow fights between her and Wonder Girl and tree houses. They can have sleepovers. And we're like, we're not doing that book.
Why would you do that?
They wanted to really, and this was, I got to be clear, not our editor who pushed for this. She was great. Jan was great. And then we worked with Liz Marsham on the second half of the book, and she was great. 2 of my favorite people to work with. But there's this disconnect, or at least there was this disconnect on, we've got our stuff for adults, and then it should be really young. And with Supergirl, we went for something that was truly all ages. I mean, we snuck a death in there. There is a character series. If you look at what happens to Supergirl, she's a time clone of Supergirl. If you read her story in her chronological order, she dies, and it's freaking sad. But we had to sneak it in. But it's also a story that deals with adult themes of isolation, intolerance, learned intolerance, and how Lena Luthor, and that's very much our version of Lena Luthor. Before then, she had like 12 comics appearances, and she was a blonde telepath who was really quiet. The version we created is basically the one that's on the Supergirl TV show.
CW.
Yeah, that's basically our version of Lena translated to TV.
Great character.
It's so weird to see. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I love the casting on that show. But we wanted this to be about Lena's learned intolerance from her brother and how it's all conditioned. It's all conditioned, and really that's what the story is about. It's about intolerance. So
I mean, and that relates to one of my favorite people of all time, Nelson Mandela. He said, kids can't learn to hate. I mean, kids aren't born hating another person for the color of their skin. They're born hating. I mean, they're taught to hate, and if they're taught to hate, they can be learned to love.
Yeah.
So Luthor would be the person to do that.
Yeah.
So that just narrows it down.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was so we did Supergirl, and why so we were early with that. Like after that, you had that's when a lot of the explosion of like it was people the industry was really slow to accept that maybe there's a larger audience than what they're selling to. They were the industry. They're the oh here's the part I didn't say. When we started doing that Supergirl book, everyone's like, "Hey man, welcome to the big two. You're in the big leagues now. How does it feel?" And we're like, we just downgraded our sales from like 2 million to 8,000. Like, this isn't the big leagues. This is great. It's fun. It's fun to play with the universe. I love DC Comics. I love the characters, the mythos. I was a DC kid all the way up. But they the adherence to the direct market, as wonderful as it has been for comics, the strict adherence to the direct market and not catering to the book market. Kids want a book. That's why this edition of this exists. They repackaged it to fit the format of all the books that kids are reading now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that'd be a perfect book to be in like a scholastic book fair.
Yeah, and look at like I personally love serialized fiction. Like take Watchmen for example. Watchmen, almost everyone who's read Watchmen now has read it as a graphic novel. It wasn't intended to be read that way. It was intended to be read one issue at a time over the course of a year. Those breaks are part of the reading experience. When I was 15 when that came out, and when Rorschach, I don't think I'm spoiling anything for anyone here, when Rorschach was caught by the police in issue 5, you thought he was done. Everyone thought he was done. And we had a month or more, because I think that the 6th issue might have been late. We had a month to wait and see what happened to the character. And that waiting was part of it. You cannot expect readers to wait anymore because it's all binge. So an adherence to the periodical market, which costs more because the price point, it's harder for a parent to go, I'll spend $3 every month on this book for you versus $10 for this chunk of a book. You get the idea.
I just think that's weird because and also like kids they can't just go down to the local 7-Eleven with a few cents in their pocket anymore. They have to ask their mom for a $5 bill, and if they're not poor, they can do that. But if they're poor, which is weird because comics were made for people the lower middle class, the bottom of the barrel, the people who have so little they can spend 11 cents, 10 cents, go out and buy a book, like a 20-page story, and get some enjoyment out of your life. Like that's beautiful. And we don't get that anymore.
Well, here's the thing. So back in 2002, Eric and I were both seeing the writing on the walls in terms of physical comics versus digital. Now, I am 49 years old. I love physical comics. However, I also am 49 years old. And the market, the readership, we got to go where the readers are. And so we started pushing for a digital footprint of comics. We started working with SLG Publishing, and the idea was we're working with SLG, and the idea was to bring multiple publishers in to make deals with companies like Image or whoever, and release. New issues would be 99 cents. Back issues would be 69 cents. We had a company. It was Dan's company at SLG. We were just advisors, but it was our kind of brainchild. The company was called iMelt, and we did have releases, but the whole thing kind of blew up. We actually started working with. I made outreach. I actually figured out who Ouroboros of the pirate community was and contacted him, which I think freaked the guy out a little. I don't know if it's a guy or girl. I just found the contact information. So I think freaked them out a little bit. And but they said, well, maybe I am this person. What are you thinking? I said, look, we're not trying to bust you. You're doing this thing. We understand we can't stop it as much as we might like to. So can we work together? Maybe you can start bundling ads in with the releases of our books so you can go ahead and keep distributing it, but put ads on where you can donate, and we'll make it official. The things you're pirating can be official. The whole thing blew up when DC and Marvel launched a lawsuit against the main pirate company at the time, Z Cult, and then it just became a Bork debacle from there. But we almost, and this is all before the Comixology app launched.
Okay, so wow, a lot of pirating going on.
A ton of pirate. Well, I was on a panel at San Diego Comic Con. I remember, oh God, what's her name? She did Castle Waiting, beautiful book. And I was on the panel with her, and I was talking about digital comics of the future. Eric and I were both on this panel, and everyone in the room laughed at us. They laughed. They're like, "Oh, no one wants to read comics on a computer screen." I'm like, "You don't understand. People are already doing this." And this woman who did Castle Waiting looks and said, "I don't think anyone's going to sit there and scan in my entire book." And I looked at her, and I felt very bad saying this. They already have. Your book is available for free now. And she got very sad, and I felt very bad about it. But
you spoke the truth, though.
Yeah, it's like we have to wake up to the reality. The house was on fire in 2002. It's 18 years later, and we're still not really doing anything about it. So, yeah.
Man.
There's a lot.
Now you got me thinking. Oh, man. Okay, so we're 25 minutes in to a 45-minute conversation. I got one question. Okay, did you have any when you started doing Supergirl? Okay, let's backtrack a bit. Superman is the greatest superhero of all time, and he's the one who started it all. There's a huge lore and mythos to him. People feel hope when they read him, and when you got to write a legacy to that, did you feel like a burden? Like, oh man, now I gotta step it up.
No. In fact, it came very naturally because the thing is, we didn't try to honor a legacy. We tried to tell a story about a human being. I mean, she's Kryptonian, but a human story about struggle. She is a character through all the comedy in the story. It's a story about somebody. I've explained enough about my background. You may understand I have a pretty cynical view of the educational system. If you read the work, almost all of it comes down to a young character who's struggling against their abusers, which speaks to me very well. In fact, I was kind of irritated when I realized it's a bit of a trope for me. But the important thing, what I liked about working with Supergirl as opposed to Superman is everything you say, and because of that, he's invulnerable in a way that I don't mean bullets bounce off of him. That he succeeds. Everything he does, for him to be Superman, he has to be good at. Supergirl is the version of Superman that isn't done being cooked yet. She
wow.
Fail. She doesn't know, especially since, unlike Superman, she didn't even grow up there, so she's got an extra hurdle. She has to learn everything along her way. She doesn't know what money is. She doesn't know what cows are. But more to the point, she doesn't know how to function in the world, emotionally. She doesn't know how to connect to people. She has to learn, and she wants to learn. She's a good person at heart, but she has to struggle. And that makes her vulnerable in a way that Superman never can be, even when we're telling stories of Superboy, because we know where it all ends for him. We know he becomes Superman and he's perfect. We need an imperfect version of him so that we can see the human struggle that he needs to represent in those moments. And don't get me wrong, I love Superman. That's just our angle.
No, that totally makes sense because in every iteration of Superman, as a boy, a child growing up, he wasn't that Superman we know today. He was always this guy who's just, I want to do the right thing, but I don't know how. Teach me. And he's lucky he got Pa Kent and Ma Kent to teach him. And seeing that, but in a Supergirl, which is really cool because her whole goal when she came to the Earth was, I need to protect my cousin. But she got here so late that he's actually already grown up. So her goal now, she has to find her way.
Now, here's the thing I have to say. See, when we did our Supergirl, Jeff Loeb did that version of Supergirl, that origin where she comes to save her cousin. People are going to be mad at me. I hate that origin for Supergirl. You notice we didn't do that one. Ours is a different version. And I don't like that origin for Supergirl because it makes it about Superman. No one's sitting there going, okay, we need to save you so you can take care of this baby. We need to save you because you're a kid too. Like it should so it kind of becomes they took Supergirl's origin and they made it more about Superman than about Supergirl. So our version, obviously, there's no way you can have it not connect to Superman. But if you read our book very carefully, at the end of it, Mixie's Pitlick is saying something that reframes the entire Superman mythos. He has a whole plan of manipulation. The sinister. He's super evil in our version. He's based off the Alan Moore one from Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow.
Oh wow, yeah, that guy was dark.
If we'd been able to follow Supergirl to our logical conclusion, we want to do 6 of these series. We would have seen that same scene from Supergirl's perspective. Supergirl in 11th grade would have traveled. She would have been living with Legion. She would have traveled back, and we would have seen her meet Superman, and it would have been the same scene because crisis still happens. And so the Mixie's Pitlick in our book is the same Mixie's Pitlick that Alan Moore wrote. And if you read it very carefully, he says something to Supergirl where he says, I might have even gone back I did all this stuff to get us where we are now. I might have even gone all the way back in time and destroyed Krypton just to make these things happen so I could have you here where I want you now.
Oh.
So, he's not even might have. He did it. So our version of Mixie's Pitlick actually destroyed Krypton just to manipulate Supergirl, not Superman. Superman's a byproduct.
Yeah.
Supergirl is his real focus. Superman is somebody he just plays with. Supergirl is the engine of his plan to push himself up to a 10th level, a 10th dimensional being, which is what he tries to do, and Supergirl stops him. And if you also pay attention, with the Hell Hand coming through the cosmos, which we know is the origin of the DC multiverse, Supergirl, at that moment, creates the multiverse. Which I know since then they've done something else with that, but we did this in 2009, so I'm just for 2008.
Hey man, that's your thing. You can claim it.
I'm calling dibs on that one. Let's see if I can find that scene. Well, one, there's the Hand of Kronos scene. It turns out it's Supergirl's hand all along. Here we go.
This is kind of a mature book for kids.
Well, that's the trick to making something all ages. We weren't going to do pillow fights. We weren't going to do tree houses. It is a book about struggle and overcoming adversity, overcoming intolerance, overcoming phobias about other people, and learning to accept people for who and what they are. And let's see, there's this panel. I actually took a shot of Krypton exploding from the 50s and put it in the background of this shot. You can't really tell. Like, Eric did all the art, but I went in and manipulated that panel right there. That's
behind Mixie?
Yeah, that's a shot from the 50s of Krypton exploding behind him. But the dialogue is fully, that's one. Heck, I might even gone back in time and destroyed all of Krypton just to get you where I wanted to. Who knows? Well, he did. So, Supergirl's origin in the show, which is based off the Just Loeb origin from 2002, pivots the character back to being, okay, we're sending the important baby, and you're the closest cousin around. You're going to go too and make sure he's okay. All right, you go too. And I thought, it's a neat idea. It's fun. The time paradox bit of it, the different aging, that's all fun because it gives her a dilemma. Don't get me wrong. There's some neat stuff there, but it just positions her to be a secondary character. And
which is great because most legacy characters nowadays are all about trying to be the character they're the legacy character of. They hardly ever make like a character who stands on their own, like Miles Morales or X-23 to a point.
Yeah, and I think it's important to make these characters have their own, become their own being. I mean, they've done a lot of great stuff with, say, Dick Grayson, who's my childhood favorite character, as an example. But they keep turning him back into Batman every now and again too. So not this time. This time it's somebody else.
So let's go real quick. Someone asked earlier, simple tricks and nonsense. If approached to add on to the story of Pirate Crew and the Meson
okay.
Marinette.
The Meson Martinet. I know what this is about, the Crimson Corsair.
Okay.
Okay?
Would you be willing to add to it? And do you already have some loose ideas of where you'd like to take it?
I have tons of story pitches that are with Lucas. There are discussions going on in different licensors. I have never stopped trying to find. This is for the Crimson Corsair from Star Wars. He's a character that appears in Force Awakens. I wrote a story called um, uh, "The Crimson Corsair and the Lost Treasure of Count Dooku." I think it's called. I should know this. I wrote it. I came up with the title. Uh, it's basically my love letter to the Clone Wars, which is a brilliant freaking cartoon,
Amazing.
amazing. And it's, I do have several stories that I have pitched. Several stories I have Sidon Ithano, the Crimson Corsair. I have his origin story mapped out. I have the details of what happens to the crew. I have details of what happens to everyone's favorite character from that story, who I won't name for anyone who hasn't read it, but it is a pivotal character from, well, it's not pivotal, but it's an important character. His existence is important. Yeah, no, I would absolutely do more. It's Lucasfilm and any other companies that they work with need to hear that people want it. The more voices there are for that, the better chance there is. Because I think we do a lot with that character, but they have to know that people are ready to buy it.
Everyone's ready to buy something of Star Wars, so that. There's no doubt that.
I would think so.
So Dominic says, "What is it like working on the Incredible comic book series at Boone Studios?" And while you answer that, I need to grab something.
Okay, all right, I'll answer that. Okay, so the weird thing about The Incredibles was we mapped that out. I worked with Mark Waid on the first 8 issues, I think, and Mark was great to work with. It was a fun experience. There were strange internal miscommunications between the company and him and me that led to some issues where, not issues in the term of books, but scheduling issues. So there was actually a point where I found out on Diamond they solicited a different writer on it, and no one told me. And then they were like, "Oh, we're so sorry. We thought you knew." And then they ended up hiring me anyway. But then I had to write the issues 2 issues at a time for 2 different artists, and I was really into it all the same. But it was canceled with 4 issues left that were written, and one of them was drawn by I think Marcio Takara.
They did. I think they did Star Wars Adventures also.
No, I think you're Mariko on that one.
Okay, I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, I think you're thinking. Hold on, I've got a thing. Yeah, here we go. The Incredibles. See, I was prepared.
Dude, you are on top of stuff.
We had a 4-issue arc that was going to explain how everything tied together, how Zarek, the supervillain, was behind everything, how he had been plaguing the Incredibles for decades, how he had been planning this since the 1950s, how he had, or the 19, when he first disappeared, how he was going to, he just wanted to be done. This was a character who had, his whole quest was to be immortal, and his superpower was he could never lose. Manipulating events. He had manipulated all the events of the film. That was all his doing. He had harvested the brain of Everseer. He knew exactly what would happen because he used that to print out basically the script. And it was all so that he could orchestrate his own death, but he wanted to make sure the world went with him. And we did this. I love where this book would end, but it got canceled. So on the penultimate chapter. So the last people see is the Incredibles slinking off into the crowd with trash being thrown at them. That's where we ended.
That's literally like ending Watchmen at issue 11.
Yeah, that was basically it. And we had, I think we were really well poised to do what would have been basically like a 20-issue arc that pulled everything together. Like we were just 4 issues away from completing it. It's written, but Disney's passed on continuing it, and now one of the main characters, Mesmerella, is largely unusable because of what they did with Screenslaver, who's functionally the same character. So yeah, I don't think we'll ever see it.
Did you make Screenslaver?
Her name Mesmerella. Eric Jones actually came in. and did the designs on her. She was originally a villain we set up for Batman Brave and the Bold when we were working on that. And when we didn't have a use for her there, I pulled her over to The Incredibles. She's functionally very similar to Screenslaver. I have no idea what their process was for creating Screenslaver. But my character Mesmerella did appear at Disneyland in the park in a little feature thing. That was neat to see.
Okay. Let's see. Should we do one more question of the chat and then continue? Okay. Well, we'll just continue. Okay, we got to get to this though before we head out. The Last Siege. We didn't get to that at the start like I wanted to, but it ends out even better because The Last Siege is so much fun. Justin told me, there it is, that beautiful book, that you had this idea for about a decade, and you rewrote it. Oh, dude, I think it was issue 7, the one where there was no words in it. Oh, dude, that was amazing. Justin's art is fantastic.
Oh, Justin was a perfect artist for this. You know, I know he talked about this. We were doing these breakfasts, him, Nick Dragata, myself, Eric, and then sometimes we'd have our friend Branwyn and our friend Jonathan and David Brothers, who work at Image, would sometimes join us on these different things. It all started when me, Nick, and Justin were on a panel together at a convention and started talking about getting together and having our own kind of like industry get-togethers. And so we started doing these regular breakfasts, and I knew I wanted Justin on it. I want to work on something with Nick someday too. But I knew I wanted to work on Justin with this because Justin's art style has this kinetic energy to it. There's just a constant buzzing. Everything is moving. Everything vibrates with it. And I really wanted him to lean in on that. Eric came in and did colors, and he did this really sloppy watercolor, which is what I wanted. And Brad came in and did this amazing work with all the explosions and fire. We had Pat Brosso on letters, who I've worked with on Supergirl, on Danger Club, on multiple books. So yeah, I had this idea as far back as like 2002, and it morphed a lot. And it's a spaghetti western set in medieval Europe. Stranger rides into town, walks into the bar, and it all starts from there. Has to help defend the town against the inevitable attack. It starts off.
And he has a fucking katana.
What's that?
And he has a fucking katana.
Yeah, he does. He has two katanas, which was frankly inspired by Gru the Wanderer.
Sergio Aragonés.
Yeah,
yes.
Did a cover. Sergio was supposed to do a cover, but he never
What?
back to me. There we go.
He backed out?
Yeah, he said he'd do it. I was talking to him. He's like, yeah. And then nothing.
The guy's old.
Yeah. He's a freaking legend. Like he
just got inducted into the Hall of Fame this year.
As he deserves it. I have every issue of Gru the Wanderer, one of my favorite comics.
It's so fun.
Here, this is I try to do a layout of a page periodically in every issue.
It kind of looks like an homage to the Dark Knight.
No, it just wanted a little bit maybe with the lightning, but just the pacing of it, just the drama. So I did the layouts on that page. Actually, I don't know if you've seen. I do the comics adaptation of the second Game of Thrones book, A Clash of Kings.
Oh wow! Okay.
And I'm doing for the battle of on the Blackwater, the big battle of Clash of Kings. I'm doing the bulk of the layouts for that. So it's new territory for me to do these.
Wow.
Rough, terribly illustrated. But
have you talked to George R.R. Martin?
I've met him a few times, but like I work with Anne, his editor. She's been the editor on Game of Thrones since basically the beginning.
Oh wow!
I work with Rhea Golden, who is his personal assistant. The three of us work really closely on this book, and then Dynamite Publishing handles the publishing. But I work with Random House. So I've met George, but haven't really. It's been like, hi. That's really it.
We share the same birthday. I just had to throw that out there.
Really? When's your birthday?
September 20th.
Virgo?
Different years, obviously.
You're a Virgo.
Yeah.
September 1st.
Hey, let's go, man.
Virgos rule.
Yeah, everything always ends crash and burning and everything, but the start is where we shine.
Yeah. So, Last Siege was a wonderful experience. It was a labor of love. This book was burning in my head for years. It started off originally, I remember sitting with Eric and our friend Ivan at Round Table Pizza, which is a chain out here, if you don't know it.
Oh, we have it.
Okay, good. And and I was like, I want to do this, but I want it to be like 100 issues. And the battle that was issue 7, I wanted it to be 30 issues of double-page spreads with no dialogue. I condensed it down to a more reasonable number.
It's weird though, because normally when there's some books that Marvel does and DC does that they're intentionally to be no dialogue, just pictures, but they overcharge. And so when I got this book and I saw there was only pictures and I read it, I didn't feel like I was like gypped or anything. It was just perfect for the story, man. And Justin's art with the teddy bear. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that was
the cover. That was the one cover I cover. That cover was my design. That was.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was. I also tried to do one cover design per book. And that one is actually a thread. I have a theme cover going on.
Yeah, you have to make sure Justin stays humble. I see how it is. Cool.
And don't get me wrong, Justin's freaking brilliant. But that one, see, there's a theme I'm going for in every book I do. See, I know you got to go. So there's basically this is from Danger Club. Eric Jones did this one.
Oh my goodness, that looks great.
It's gruesome, and it's then in Game of Thrones, I did the cover for issue 29, I think, and it's the trampled banner of House Baratheon, of Stannis Baratheon. Mm-hmm. And you put each one of these covers is supposed to be the same kind of structure. So the doll in the rubble, the pile of bodies, the trampled banner, it's all supposed to be the same. It's a theme cover stretched across different titles.
Oh, so it's like I think it was Lionel Francis Yu's Avengers with Hickman. Like the first 3 issues were the same picture.
Oh, I haven't seen that, but it could, yeah, they're not literally the same picture. They're more meant to convey, in this instance,
just the same theme.
The same theme, the same kind of tone. And I like the idea of every book I have that's not all ages. These are my not all ages books. Every book I have that hits that has that same kind of broken loss of innocence moment in a cover. That's what that cover. We see the doll in the beginning of Last Siege.
Almost like The Tiger and the Lamb by Blake.
Yeah, where is she? So she's playing with the doll here. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
And then we don't see the doll again until the beginnings of issue 7, on the cover of issue 7. Now, bear in mind, I gave the idea to Justin. Justin is one who executed this. I didn't even give him a thumbnail. This is the idea, the doll in the rubble with fire around it, broken.
No, screw Justin. You did it. We'll give it to you.
I did it. It was me. No, my art is terrible. My drawing skills are atrocious. And that's the beautiful thing. Working with Justin, I would give him very little direction. Like the fight scenes, it's just the beats, like, and let him, he's the one who's got to execute it. And same with Eric. Like every artist I work with, I try to back away and let them have the level of control. They're on the front lines. They are the ones who have to have a voice. They have to feel like they are owning that scene, that moment. The only book that I'm super structured with, my pages are a panel of description might be half a page long, is the Clash of Kings stuff, which is incredibly dense, but it has to be.
Oh, dude, that art is beautiful.
Oh yeah, this is great. I do periodic layouts on this one too. This is but the detail on this, because we have to, we're not creating something new. We're we're working with the source material. You get the idea.
Yeah.
Mel Ruby is the artist on that. Who's
okay. So Justin, thank you, Landry, so much for stopping by. I have to head to work, so we're gonna end it here. Everyone who's in the chat, 8 people, man, you got more than Justin did. You are more popular than him. Look at you. Thank you for stopping by and sharing your infinite wisdom to the interwebs.
Well, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
All right, guys. I'll see you next week with the art extraordinaire Steve Lieber, who did. I know, dude, he's amazing. Steve Lieber, who did the art for Jimmy Olsen with Matt Fraction. So get to talk to him about Jimmy Olsen and The Fix. So stop by next week. See you guys.